After I graduated from Marquette, I was planning on going to law school to Paul down the street, and I really had nothing to do for that summer before I was going to start at DePaul. And my parents knew some floor broker on the floor of the CBOE was looking for someone for the summer. I went down there and it was completely eye-opening. It was unbelievable. It was such fun, and I learned a lot. Halfway through my second semester of law school, the guy that I'd worked for on the floor called me and said, "Our business is booming. I need another body. I'll put you on a seat. I'll pay you this." And I said, "When do I start?" Trading volatility in and out, and I would scalp the stock against positions. IBM was very liquid, easy to get in and out of stock. The options were fairly liquid at most of the strike prices. I tended to be front month, second month guy. Didn't really care about third month out. A few hundred either way. Maybe 400 or 500, in total. Calls traded a lot more. Puts were your friend. That was the maxim on the floor. I liked calls more, but always had to have some puts in the back pocket. I was more bullish, probably, than I should have been. It was challenging, but I certainly looked forward to it pretty much every day. It was a blast. I made some good friends that I still keep in touch with to this day. A certain amount of brashness, the ability to ask the right questions. Obviously a voice, that got to be a little old. Well, it was great in terms of the bid ask, right? I mean, there certainly wasn't, I'm down there mid 80s to early 90s, and there certainly wasn't the amount of regulation in terms of what you couldn't do. And that's where I think it was beneficial to be on the floor. Bid ask, you'd see the book, you knew where the orders were in the book. If something, transpired and you could reach for the book or sell the book. That's nice to know. That's good to have. So you were clearly a step ahead of, the public or the institutional guys. There was a guy named Irv Kessler who was just brilliant. You could just tell, that he knew the numbers going on in his head. So a lot of people just kind of watched him. A guy named Peter Michaels that I worked for. He taught me a lot about spreading. I would stand with him in the pit, and that was the bulk of my knowledge, watching him. Interestingly, the first day that I worked for him, he was backing a trader in Teledyne, and Teledyne had some earnings issue or some bad news of some sort, and lost $1 million that day. So that was a little bit eye-opening. I didn't necessarily participate well in the opening, just because, for a number of reasons. I don't know, I just wanted to see where things would settle out first and just kind of calm down a little bit. But they tended to be chaotic because trying to open all the different strikes, and the stock's moving one way or the other, and the strikes that have already been opened, people are trying to make business or trade based on that. So it was a little challenging. A couple times clerks were challenged to try and drink a whole gallon of milk in an hour without vomiting. And I distinctly remember one guy did not do well, and he actually launched on the salad bar in the cafeteria. So, it was just infantile, kind of juvenile things like that. As a pit, once we sent we got a plane ticket and sent a clerk to Pennsylvania to buy a lottery ticket when it's $3 or $4 million, and there weren't very many lotteries at the time. And I think he came back with like a $2 or $4 winner. So I mean, just things like that. There were guys that traded after the bell. That was probably the most common thing. A new guy came in, kind of a short but stocky guy, trying to make markets, and one of the older guys challenged him. He was in there for a couple weeks, and they'd scream and yell at each other and point fingers at each other's face. And the older guy at some point said, "All right, let's go outside." And the new guy's like, "Hey, I don't think you really want to do this," and was very reluctant to do so. They went outside. The newer guy had black belt in karate and was over in like a matter of moments. I was in the IBM pit in crash of '87 and had a huge, much bigger position than I should have. Zeroing it out, I was net long one put, which was wonderful. At the time, I think it was $106,000 winner, but obviously, you can't get out at all the mark prices and such. So that was interesting. But I was more of kind of a grinded out kind of guy, not a big swinger. Probably the '89 crash in October. United Airlines, there was talks of a leveraged buyout, and then that fell apart, and that sent the market south. I think the Dow Jones was down 7% that day. I was trading in IBM, and my recollection, it was expiration Friday. And I had some out-of-the-money puts that were, $20. I didn't worry about them because they were going to go out worthless. Well, it turned out not to be the case. And I still remember a guy next to me buying a book, and everyone just sort of looked at him, all these garbage puts, looked at him, and what are you doing? He goes, this thing's going a lot lower. I mean, that's one of those things that just sit in my head, and he made fortune. IBM had earnings, and the day before, I ended up much longer than I wanted to be at the end of the day before. Earnings came out the next day. Didn't help me. Stock, I think, opened down about 7.5%. Probably the '87 crash. I was 28. And it was scary to me to see older, more established guys, panicking and, lines at the bank to get money out and lines in the clearinghouse to, facilitate that same thing to get their money out. And there were all kinds of rumors, back and forth on the floor, and you wouldn't see people for like months at a time. And I knew at the time that it was a big deal and that I probably should have left, but subsequently, I wouldn't have met my wife, and a lot of other things wouldn't have happened. I'd probably speak to more people on the floor as to what the experience would be, the ups and downs. And I would certainly would have liked to have brought some of my subsequent technical analysis knowledge to the floor. I think that would have been a huge help. Trust your gut. Relationships matter. Have a plan, and have another plan. Self-discipline is absolutely crucial. And let your no's be no's and your yeses be yeses. I was just tired of it. I was tired of screaming. I was tired of yelling. It was 1994. Just got married. We just bought a house, so I figured I'd do, 3 major life changes pretty much all at the same time. Get them over with. I was having a conversation with my son in his room. Mid-sentence, I slumped against the wall, fell to the floor. My son had just turned 16. My daughter was in the house downstairs. She was 12 at the time. My wife was in the city. He called 911, told the operator that he did not know CPR. The operator directed him what to do until a police officer arrived and the EMTs arrived. We were fortunate that it was on a night in February that there was no snow. It was relatively warm, and we're maybe 3 minutes from the nearest police and fire station. But interestingly, the state of Illinois had passed in January. My cardiac arrest was in February. Legislation to allow EMTs to spend more time in the home when they're trying to revive someone. They were on the 5th try, shocking me. That would have been their last attempt if I didn't get a sustained beat. So that's a little sobering, when you hear that they're that close. 11 days in the hospital. I have a pacemaker. Was out of work for about 6 months, just trying to recover. And I'm happy to say that, my health is good. And, one of the things that my son and I have done, we've spoken to about 800 kids at Barrington High School. We show the video, we tell our story. And that's to get them to take their state mandated CPR education seriously. And we've seen that it's had a pretty good impact, because when they see, a kid their own age that can do this, they pay a little bit more attention. And interestingly, my arrest was on a Saturday night. I'd planned on going into the office on Saturday to catch up on some work, and my wife was insistent that I not do that. So I like to tell her that she saved my life, because if this had happened in the office, there would be nobody there. I think about that a lot. It's been a big part of my life, obviously, for the last 3 years. And now I'm on the Illinois Advocacy Committee for the American Heart Association. I speak and write whenever I can to promote CPR training and AED awareness. That's my give back in terms of getting a second chance.